Welcome to U.S. Law Shield's live webinar across America. My name is Sam Malone. I'm in Houston, Texas. Thank you so much for joining us on our broadcast tonight. It's the answers to the COVID-19 questions you just can't get from the media. And there are still a lot of questions out there for those of us who are proud 2A folks, for those of us who are members, like myself, of U.S. Law Shield. All the hundreds of thousands watching, you know how great it is to be a member. But if you're part of that big audience watching and you're not a member yet of U.S. Law Shield, what are you waiting for? Go to their website, uslawshield.com, and remember, it is the leaders, it is the absolute leaders in legal defense for your self-defense. Members like myself, 24/7 access to attorney-answered emergency hotlines that are answered by independent program attorneys from your state. Like I'm in Texas, I would get an independent program attorney in my state, plus special member-only offers, events, discounts, and more. Visit the website, uslawshield.com/defend. Also coming up, we'll talk with one of the independent program attorneys about what you should do, because we took some questions from social media and stuff. What should you do with maybe the extra ammo you purchased during the COVID-19 crisis? What, you just sell it to your buddy? Is that okay? What do you do with extra handguns? So we'll check in with Edwin Walker, one of the independent program attorneys. In the meantime, let's say hi to two great friends who will be joining us, Richard Hayes and Emily Taylor, independent program attorneys with U.S. Law Shield, joining us on our broadcast today. Richard, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Sam. Good to talk to you.
And Emily, it's good to have you aboard as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Sam.
Now, listen, there's still a lot of things involving this COVID-19 lockdown and pandemic. We in Texas, we still have a couple days left of this shelter in place. For others, it could go into May, and in some states into June. Let me ask you, Richard, from the Texas point of view, if law enforcement are busy. In fact, here in our neck of the woods, there's been a record number of break-ins in commercial businesses, but law enforcement just not responding to non-life-threatening calls for help. Criminals are being let out of jails. We saw that one. Richard Hayes, what does it mean for a law-abiding gun owner like myself or the thousands and thousands watching?
Well, it has a lot of responsible people on edge, knowing that if they call for help, it may not arrive. And so I've been talking to lots of folks about, hey, does this change the way I defend myself? Or what are the legal ramifications given those circumstances? And what I've been seeing, and what I want our members to take away from this is, it is definitely something a jury would be allowed to consider. Let's say somebody breaks in your house, you're forced to defend yourself, forced to defend your family. Is that something a jury would be allowed to consider, knowing in your mind, hey, help may not be on the way? And it absolutely is. Whenever we have these cases, we follow what's called a reasonable belief standard, a reasonable person standard, and the jury gets to consider one, all the objective things, the physical evidence, things like that, but they also get to look at the subjective beliefs, the beliefs you had in your mind at the time that you used force or deadly force, and that includes the belief of, hey man, I'm on my own. And so it's something, it's a really interesting topic of discussion.
Emily Taylor, to you, independent program attorney in Texas. What does that mean to you if law enforcement are stretched thin, a huge number of break-ins in businesses and assaults and stuff like that? What does that mean to you, and what should I know as a responsible gun owner?
Well, I think that something that's important to think about is that criminals are fully aware that law enforcement might not be there to respond quickly. And so we have a situation where you may be more likely to suffer some sort of particularly low-level criminal acts, break-ins of your car in your driveway, thefts, off of your front lawn, things of that nature. And so what I really want people to think about is, how can I respond to these things without putting myself in danger of either, number one, reacting with too much force, reacting prematurely or too late, and then, putting yourself in danger of going to jail, being arrested. And then also, of course, thinking about what you would do, knowing that if you go outside and try to engage that bad guy, they might turn on you with a weapon. You don't want to lose your life either. So everyone's response is going to be different. Whereas if I see someone, breaking into my car, my response is going to be stay inside, call 911, let the police deal with it if they can come out. Whereas there are many people, one of my law partners, Edwin Walker, is proud of saying that he's going to be the first one out there, confronting someone in a situation like that. So, it really is a personal thing that you need to think about, but you need to be sure that in whatever your response is, you're keeping yourself physically safe and also safe from arrest.
We are live, U.S. Law Shield, the finest and the leading legal defense for your self-defense. I'm Sam Malone in Houston. Let me stay with independent program attorney Emily Taylor. Now, we still have a few days left in Texas of our shelter quarantine in place. But what if I violate it? Emily, I'll start with you. Could this endanger or mess with my gun rights here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is possibly, depending on what state you're in, depending on exactly what you violate. So I'll give you two examples just here in Texas. Most of us live under, a stay-at-home order here in Texas, which is little more than a strongly worded suggestion. However, there's also a mechanism in Texas for a judge to issue an order that does in fact place you, Sam Malone, or whomever, in quarantine. And if you're caught violating that order, that's actually a third-degree felony, which means were you convicted of that, you would lose your gun rights forever. So it really does depend. Are you actually under a judicial quarantine? Are you under a stay-at-home or a shelter-in-place? What penalties has your state laid out for you? Luckily, most of us are dealing with these sort of, a little bit more of a suggestion than anything else, orders, which is great because those should not cost you your gun rights, but it really does depend.
Coming up, we'll get to your questions for our independent program attorneys, but let me jump to Richard Hayes, independent program attorney. Is there anything I should know, or do you want to add to Emily's? What if I violate the, quote, quarantine or shelter in place? Will this affect my gun rights?
Yeah, it absolutely can. And I 100% agree with Emily. And if you take a survey across the states, it ranges from, simple fine only or just getting warnings to felony convictions. So Emily expressed the high end punishment felony. If you're a convicted felon, can't possess firearms or ammunition for the rest of your life. Very severe. In the cases where it's somewhere in the middle, let's say it's a jailable offense, but it doesn't, you still have a right to purchase and possess firearms. That could affect your license and permits to carry handguns because most states disqualify you after a conviction for one of those types of crimes. So it's not just the extreme examples. It could be somewhere in the middle too. So people need to be vigilant.
Wow. Richard Hayes, let's stick with you, independent program attorney. Has the legally justified use of deadly force changed at all during this COVID-19 pandemic, Mr. Hayes?
No, and the other attorneys that I talked to from the other states, it does not appear that it has changed. We have seen some government officials use this opportunity as what they call an opportunity to push gun control legislation. We haven't seen them go after the fundamental right to defend yourself and family yet. But really, so far, what we can tell is they're using it more to come after firearms possession is what we're seeing.
You're watching Answers to COVID, questions you're not getting from the media. I'm Sam Malone in Texas. Let me jump back to Emily Taylor. Justified use of deadly force changed at all? What do you want to add to that?
Well, the only thing I'll add to Richard's comment is, again, thinking these things through is what needs to be changing here. The law itself, not changed. However, the way you parse these things out in your mind should change because, the last thing you want to do is end up in a jail cell because you've used what could end up being justified force or deadly force. I can't tell you how many clients we have whose cases ultimately get either dismissed or no billed by the grand jury, which is great. That's a great outcome from an attorney perspective. And it's great for those clients too, but they still had to be arrested and processed through the jail. Unpleasant, but normally not a big deal. It is a very big deal now because jails are dirty. And so the last place you want to be is a place where disease festers in the first place when we're in the midst of a pandemic.
Well said, Emily Taylor, independent program attorney, U.S. Law Shield, the leaders in legal defense for your self-defense. Also got Richard Hayes on the screen. Emily, let's stick with you. In Texas, we call it LTC, license to carry. It used to be called CHL, concealed handgun license. Can I still get my LTC permit while I'm, quote, locked down at home, as I have been for the past 7+ weeks?
Yeah, I'm really glad this question came up because I can't tell you how many people have called in and I've spoken to in the last several weeks who have said to me, I am waiting on my LTC. I don't know what's taking so long. I don't have any criminal history. What's the deal? And unfortunately, right now, the deal is there are incredibly long wait times with the DPS. It's just one of those things. There are government workers working from home. There are government resources stretched thin. Maybe there are government workers out sick even. So it is taking an incredibly long time to process the applications right now. Doesn't mean you shouldn't submit your application. Doesn't mean that you need to wait, delay. It just means while you're sitting at home thinking, gosh, why is this taking so long? Don't take it personally. It's probably not you. We are hearing delays from everywhere right now.
You're watching our answers to COVID questions that you're not getting from the media. Richard Hayes, real quick, I submitted my app, let's say, for my LTC. Hasn't come, but, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it. Softball question on this one, but still you got to hit it. I don't have my LTC, hasn't come in the mail. Can I wear and carry my gun openly in Texas without it? I mean, I know it's coming. I know they're busy. I know they're jammed. But,
Right.
Come on.
Well, unlike your driver's license where they say, hey, this is proof of a valid driver's license and you carry it around in your wallet for a period of time until the physical copy comes in. In Texas, you cannot carry generally in public unless you have physical possession of your license to carry. And that's the way it is in the majority of states that aren't constitutional carry. You need to have physical possession of that license or permit to carry before you go out and physically carry in public.
So just the old, it's in the mail, wink, wink, officer, just won't cut it. Got to have it in your hand, got to have it in your wallet or your purse.
Yeah, that's right. And I've talked to several clients who they've received their licenses while this pandemic is going on. The real hardest hit folks are people who can't schedule fingerprinting, can't go get a passport photo taken, can't fulfill all those other little requirements to apply in the first place. So we're going to see a huge influx once this starts calming down.
Excellent. Richard Hayes and Emily Taylor with us. You're watching Answers to COVID questions you just can't get from the media. Emily, can you hang tight for just a second?
Mm-hmm.
Richard, can you chill for just a second?
Sure thing.
Outstanding. I want to take a quick break. I had a chance to catch up with independent program attorney Edwin Walker. Got to ask him some questions. Plus, when we come back with Richard and Emily, we'll go to some of the questions you submitted for the independent program attorneys of U.S. Law Shield. I'm Sam Malone. Questions with Edwin Walker in a minute.
Firearms are a part of my daily life. My office is the gun range. When I'm competing, it's in a safe and controlled environment. But out in the real world, I'm vulnerable just like you. I'm exposed to the same threats, and I abide by the same laws. With U.S. Law Shield, they take care of me. I know I'm protected if I ever need to defend myself, and they educate me on the legal ability to do so. And that's why my everyday carry consists of 3 critical items: my gun, my phone, and my U.S. Law Shield card. Training gives me peace of mind on the range, and Law Shield, well, they give me peace of mind off the range. I'm Jessie Harrison, world and national champion pistol shooter, and proud member of U.S. Law Shield.
Welcome back. I'm Sam Malone in Houston, Texas. U.S. Law Shield broadcast of COVID answers that the media just can't seem to get to you, and that's why we're doing it here. Make sure you become a member of U.S. Law Shield. I'm a proud member, uslawshield.com/defend. Coming up, we'll get to some of your questions that you have submitted. But first, the other day I had a chance to catch up with independent program attorney Edwin Walker to hit on some questions like, bought a lot of ammo. Can I sell it to my buddies? Let's see what happened. Let's talk post-COVID-19 in this segment. We have independent program attorney Edwin Walker with us because, face it, there was some changes made. There was some buying that went on. There was some panic and uncertainty and anxiety. A lot of questions in that category. Edwin, welcome aboard, sir.
Hey, Sam. It's great to be here with you.
All right, let's get right to it. COVID-19, when it was kind of happening and percolating, maybe I went to the gun store and maybe they had a lot of ammo, and I bought a whole bunch of 9mm, and I bought ammo for my AR-15, and now I got a lot of ammo. And I'm thinking, I spent a lot of money, I could use it back. Can I just go sell it to a friend, or generally, can you walk back into a gun store? What are the rules and regs? And we'll start here in Texas.
Well, Sam, that's a very interesting question because I've never heard a gun owner utter those words, I've got too much ammo. And so I reject that question on principle.
Okay, so maybe it's the spouse. Maybe it's the spouse says, you spent all this money on ammo. I want shoes. What can we do?
Well, fortunately, in Texas, there's not many restrictions on selling ammunition. Now, there are no federal laws restricting a private person from selling ammunition. Interestingly enough, there is a federal law prohibiting somebody from manufacturing ammunition and selling it without a license. But if you're just out there selling a surplus that you stockpiled, or you maybe perhaps got rid of the gun that you had bought the ammunition for and you do feel like selling it, really, there's no restriction. Put an ad on Craigslist, or tack up if you did it the old-fashioned way and just tacked up a notice at your, at a local gun range or something. I'm sure that you could find a very willing buyer to take that ammunition off your hands, especially some of the more popular rounds: 9mm, 45, 5.56, 223. Those will go fast. Like I said, a true gun aficionado does not believe that there is such a thing as too much ammunition, and they're always looking for a deal.
Yes, I agree, but we have hundreds of thousands of people joining us, so there's always going to be that one outlier goes, I just got too much ammo. So coming back to selling, you're my buddy. I see you. I'm Edwin. You want to buy some, the 223, and I can just sell it to you. No rules, no regulations. No one's getting in trouble in Texas.
That's correct. There is no rules. Now, I would like to take this opportunity, though, to juxtapose that to selling a gun. There are rules about selling a gun to somebody else. You can't do it. You can't basically do it as a business or for commercial purpose, because otherwise you would risk being charged as being a gun seller without a license. That's what a lot of the anti-gun folks like to call the gun show loophole. Doesn't have to take place at a gun show; just has to be between two people who are not licensed to. One of them not licensed to sell a firearm. And also here in Texas, there are state laws. Now, it doesn't require you to have a license to sell a firearm, but you have to remember that you can't knowingly sell a firearm to somebody who you have information is going to commit a criminal act with it. Also, you cannot knowingly sell your firearm to a felon, somebody convicted of misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, an intoxicated person, a minor, those sorts of things. Also, it would be a violation of federal law for you to knowingly sell your firearm to somebody from out of state. So let's say that you did put an advertisement on Craigslist or on Facebook or some other social media platform. A person shows up, they want to purchase your firearm. They got an Oklahoma license plate or a Louisiana license plate. they show you a Louisiana ID or an Oklahoma or an Arkansas ID, that would then put you on notice that they are not a resident of your same state. Therefore, the sale to them would be prohibited. So whereas the firearms selling, you do have to pay attention to, the ammunition selling, you generally do not have to pay attention to.
Edwin Walker, independent program attorney. Real quick, you said sell to somebody. I don't sell. Maybe I barter. Maybe I trade my AR-15 for your something, whatever. Same rules and regulations apply. No cash. Didn't really sell it. I just traded.
Yeah, any type of transfer where the firearm leaves your possession and goes into the possession and ownership of another person, even a loaner would be covered, though. You have to abide by those rules with regard to guns. Ammunition, you do not. So that's kind of colors that distinction about how ammunition and firearms are treated differently, at least under federal law and under state law.
One of the U.S. Law Shield independent program attorneys, Edwin Walker. And real quick before we go, we're talking about during this time, this COVID-19 time, gun owners and such have new laws and such that pop up. First of all, how do I find out if gun laws changed in my state?
Well, you'll want to pay attention to the orders that were issued by your state and local governments and see if those orders did somehow impact your firearms rights. Generally, they will not. And here in Texas, they certainly have not. And in fact, here in Texas, there was actually a pushback from the state government against local governments who wanted to attempt to alter some firearms rights. But here in Texas, we have a very strong preemption law that says that the state makes gun laws, the local governments do not. And so any change in state law would have to come through an executive order from the governor, and I can pretty much guarantee that will not happen during this COVID-19. And then, of course, any permanent change in gun laws would come during the legislative session. Here in Texas, that begins next January of 2021. So pay attention to those. And also, I want to make everybody wary that there are several gun bills currently pending in Congress. And while, of course, Congress has been occupied with how to respond to the COVID-19, and they would not make any interim orders, they don't have the power to issue an order. They only have the power to pass laws. They don't have the power to create an order or issue an order. Let's be sure that whenever we do get back to normal, that we pay attention to the over 25 gun bills that are currently pending in Congress. It was as if the Congress went to the anti-gun folks and said, give us your wish list of every terrible gun law you would need. And they all put it into one bill. It's called H.R. 5717. And I would like to warn people that this is on the horizon. So there's also a companion bill. Does the exact same thing. It was filed by Senator Elizabeth Warren, so we know her to be a very anti-gun senator. Watch out for those bills and make sure that the Congress does not use anything that has happened during this COVID-19 emergency to try to advocate for and pass onerous, restrictive, unnecessary gun laws on the federal level.
Wow, and speaking of onerous and restrictive, real quick, you're not wearing a mask. I'm certainly not wearing a mask. There are people across America whose jurisdictions were like, you better wear a mask. How do these mask laws kind of compare to some of the gun laws that popped up during the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, it's very interesting because obviously civil libertarians have been very, very concerned about these restrictive orders. Now, one of the earliest ones that came out was the restriction on, our gun stores, essential businesses, our gun ranges, essential businesses. And of course, people could have turned the other way and said, well, I'm not a gun person. This really doesn't bother me. I don't understand. It doesn't concern me. It only applies to people who want to do that. Same with churches. There's been a lot of concern about whether or not you can gather to worship. And there's a lot of people who do not have any kind of religious affiliation or go to church. And so it didn't concern them. It only concerned people who want to go to churches. But the new mask regulations that have gone into effect affect everyone over the age of 10. And so now that there is a a draconian imposing restriction that affects everyone who decides to go outside. I definitely think that these next few days and weeks are going to be very, very interesting to see how these get enforced, who they get enforced against. Are the police going to use them to investigate people who they believe are maybe up to other types of crimes, how they're going to be used. And then ultimately, after this is over and after all these cases have gone through the court system, is there going to be any, precedent set? Is there going to be any restrictions on how far emergency orders that affect the general public go in the future and how our future civil liberties will be affected?
Crazy world we live in. Great to have you aboard. Independent program attorney with U.S. Law Shield, Edwin Walker. As always, thanks for being part of the family.
Thank you, Sam. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Hey, what's going on down there?
Call the police!
U.S. Law Shield Emergency Hotline. What's your emergency?
One call away, 24/7, 365.
I'm Sam Malone in Houston, Texas. You're watching answers to COVID-19 questions you are not getting from the media. Great visit from our friend, independent program attorney Edwin Walker. Remember, if you're watching this and you're a member, you know all the great benefits, right? But if you're not and you're checking this out, please hop aboard uslawshield.com/defend. Become a member. Join the hundreds of thousands across America and become a member of the leading legal defense for your self-defense. 24/7 access to an independent attorney emergency hotline, attorney answered hotline right for you in your state, and member discounts and all kinds of events where you can get member seminars and learn more. Just the peace of mind of being a member like I am of U.S. Law Shield. Let's get to your questions now. Let me get back with Richard Hayes and Emily Taylor, both independent program attorneys in Texas. Let's go. Richard, we'll start with you. Question from John, last initial M. I'll read. What are some legal guidelines you can give me on how to handle confrontations by either another individual or a group of angry people who get in your face, whether it's because I'm not wearing a mask or I bought the lost pack of toilet paper? John M. wants to know, you might have a rowdy crowd, and they're like, where's your mask? Where's your mask, dude? Richard, give us some help.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough position because we, as the folks in the Second Amendment and self-defense community, we understand probably better than most that using self-defense or force or deadly force should be a last resort. So we're always trying to avoid confrontation when possible. Things haven't escalated to a point where people are rioting for food and things like that here in the United States. But it's a scary prospect to think, people are, if you've heard the saying, people are smart, individuals are smart, people are dumb. Mobs can be pretty scary. So what I would recommend is try to de-escalate, try to avoid the scenario if possible. The COVID-19 hasn't been placed in the same category as things like HIV/AIDS and things like that the courts and some legislative bodies have deemed, hey, if you intentionally try to infect somebody with this, that it's going to be use of a deadly weapon. So we don't have that with the coronavirus, and it would be up to you to explain or try to demonstrate to a jury that this thing is probably going to kill you. This thing is a deadly weapon. this is deadly force, and if you were to use deadly force in response, then only then would your conduct be justified. I think it's going to be an uphill battle. Don't want you to be a test case. Try to de-escalate.
And Emily, jump in, please. Independent program attorney, U.S. Law Shield in Texas. Angry crowd, hostility, who knows what. In some states, this could be going on not just through May, but through June when it gets warm. What say you?
Yeah, what I would add is that in most states, when you are acting defensively, the best thing you can do is use the least amount of force that's going to stop the situation. And maybe, like Richard said, that's no force. Hopefully, the best case scenario is you can escape a situation by, saying you guys are out of your minds and you can walk away. Maybe the least amount of force is, just sort of, putting your arm out to block someone from getting closer to you. Maybe it's using pepper spray or something else. Maybe the least amount of force you could use if attacked would be to draw your firearm, maybe even discharge it. But you've got to use the least amount of force that's going to keep you safe, whatever that is. So to me, that's my best way of thinking about it. What is the thing I could do that's going to keep me safest, that is at the bottom of the force continuum, working my way up only if necessary?
You're watching Answers to COVID-19 Questions You're Not Getting Through the Media. I'm Sam Malone. Emily, staying with you, Robert M. wrote in his question, do presidential or gubernatorial emergency declarations result in any automatic changes to concealed or open carry laws or regulations, Em?
So generally not automatically, but that's an excellent question, because what they do is often they give the executives, whether that be the mayor, the county judge, the governor, whomever, they give the executive body more license to issue orders that can constrict the Second Amendment. Jackson, Mississippi, and this is just coming out recently, and it's a great example. So there's a state of emergency declared in Mississippi, of course, as virtually everywhere. And what the Jackson mayor has done is say, we have this provision of the Mississippi Code, and this allows me to regulate, specifically, actually, it allows the regulation of the purchase, possession, and transfer of firearms, but anything else that can affect the public safety. And so what the Jackson, Mississippi mayor has done is say, you cannot open carry in the midst of this crisis because violent crime has gone up. And I have the authority to say that because a state of emergency has been declared in my state. So while not automatic, it is absolutely possible in many, many, many states that executive body can actually go in and try to regulate in the name of public safety your firearm rights because that emergency has been declared. And you just have to look at your city, look at your county, and try to figure out who is making those regulations and who's choosing to forego.
Excellent, Emily Taylor. Richard, you're in Texas, I'm in Texas. Here in the county where we're doing our broadcast, we were told by the county judge, like kind of the high-ranking county commissioner, that I have to wear a mask. It was a big to-do. In fact, she laid out there, if you get caught not wearing a mask in the county, you could, are you ready for this, America? Go to jail for up to 6 months and get with up to $1,000 fine. Absolute insanity. But Daryl L., who's in our backyard, has a question. My county's telling me I have to wear a mask. Is it even legal that I could be fined for not complying? And most importantly, could that result in any damage to my gun or carrying rights? Good question, Daryl L. Richard Hayes, what do you got?
Yes, I mean, the authority has been given to local entities to regulate that type of behavior, and they've been given the authority to tag on penalties here in Texas. Now, there hasn't been an order. We were expecting to hear. We heard from the governor today. I was hoping that he would supersede that county judge's order, removing the mask requirement. He didn't go that far, but the county judge in Texas has the authority to regulate that type of behavior, unfortunately, and it has bark and bite. They can attach a penalty to it. So if you were violating the order, it's a Class B misdemeanor. They have told the police to use extreme discretion when issuing citations or making arrests for these things. I haven't heard of anybody being arrested yet, but that doesn't stop them.
Wow, that's crazy. Richard Hayes, independent program attorney. Emily Taylor, independent program attorney. We got Edwin Walker, independent program attorney previously. All of these independent program attorneys you can reach in an emergency when you are a member of U.S. Law Shield. 24/7 access, 365 days a year. It's attorney answered emergency hotline for you when you are a member of U.S. Law Shield. Join the hundreds of thousands and become a member, uslawshield.com/defend. Let me jump to this one. This is a good one. Gary S. asked this question. I'm jumping ahead here. Can I conceal carry my spouse's gun? Can I conceal carry a gun not registered to me that I don't own? Emily, let's go to you first. Let's just say I have a license to carry, but my wife doesn't, and she wants to carry my gun, or vice versa. What do you got to say during our special segment of answers to COVID-19 questions you're not getting from the media?
Yeah, well, the good news to that is in Texas, absolutely you can. No problem at all. Now, in most states that don't maintain their own firearm registries, it's going to be the same. However, the more restrictive we get in terms of firearm registries, firearm ownership identification cards, essentially any of the states that tend to be more anti-Second Amendment than pro, you are probably going to have an issue. I know, and I'm a Texas lawyer, not a California lawyer, but I have heard of U.S. Law Shield members in California with just such a problem. I let my friend borrow my gun, and he was carrying it. He's got a license, but it wasn't his gun. Now he's been arrested. It does happen. So you absolutely need to check your state's law. You need to call and ask to speak to your state's independent program attorney. But luckily, those of us in Texas and in the other states that are Second Amendment friendly, it is generally permissible to borrow your spouse's gun, a family member's. I mean, here in Texas, as long as the person's qualified to own, purchase, possess, we can make loans out. I've loaned Richard my gun before. We're lucky here.
Amen to that. Richard Hayes, you want to add to that as well? Borrowing Emily's gun, or a spouse, let's say. What do you got on that?
Yeah. So, and if you're in one of these restrictive states, you know who you are. You're on the coast. You're in the Northeast, Illinois, New Jersey. These types of places, if there are going to be some type of registration requirement on the front end, that should be your red flag that, okay, there's something to this, loaning it, transferring it without going through some kind of legal channel. That would be your red flag to know, all right, maybe there's more to this than just handing the gun over. So use extreme caution. We've heard of cases where folks lend guns and get in trouble. So, but that would be the indicator. Did I have to register this on the front end? That would be a good red flag.
Love it. Sticking with you, Richard Hayes, independent program attorney, U.S. Law Shield. I'm Sam Malone. You're watching Answers to COVID-19 questions you are not getting in the media. Norman C. must have been listening to the last segment with Edwin Walker. Edwin brought up H.R. 5717. Norman writes, what is the current status and what concern should I have of H.R. 5717? Because Edwin said you got to keep an eye on it. What can firearm owners do to protect our rights? Mr. Hayes.
To protect your rights, vote and be in contact with your legislators. Right now, the bill is in a committee for the terrorism committee. It's still being evaluated. There's not a whole lot of co-sponsors. It seems to not be making a lot of forward progress. But it is one of the scariest pieces of gun control legislation I've ever read. I'd encourage you all to go look up H.R. 5717. It has a litany of provisions. I mean, it is a gun control advocates. I mean, it's their dream bill. It has literally any provision you can imagine in it. But the way that you protect yourself, vote in folks who treat the Second Amendment with the reverence that it deserves. And be in contact with your legislators.
Emily Taylor, jump in on that one too from Norman C's question, H.R. 5717. How will this affect us if it becomes law?
Oh gosh, it would turn every state in the whole country into New York, but worse. It really is incredibly dangerous. I will give a shout out to Richard Hayes, who wrote beautifully drafted letters to our congressmen and our senators, because there is a similar bill in the Senate stating strong opposition to this bill. Anyone who is interested in doing the same, I strongly urge you to do so. It takes just a small amount of your time to let your lawmakers know. They work for you. Let them know what you think about this bill, because it is incredibly dangerous, and enough voices, let's hope, can make a difference.
You're watching Answers to COVID-19 Questions You're Not Getting in the Media. I'm Sam Malone, U.S. Law Shield. These are your questions. Sticking with Emily, and Brian S. had a question. We're dealing with this in Houston, and so many others are having these lockdowns or quarantines or stay home. Brian asks, Emily, can I be legally stopped from leaving my house and driving to visit family or friends? Emily, what do you've got?
Well, in order to be stopped, the police have to have reasonable suspicion that you're violating the law. Reasonable suspicion is more than just a hunch, but it can be a fairly low level. It is something that, and Richard and I were prosecutors. In fact, we were prosecutors together down in Galveston County, Texas. We looked at a lot of cases and a lot of traffic stops. And, unfortunately, we saw the rules of reasonable suspicion were a little bit malleable sometimes. So the answer is they can, if they have reasonable suspicion that you are not to be out and about, and you're out and about anyway. So, here in Houston and Texas with these work safe orders, no, certainly not. If you've been, ordered to stay at home, if you are in a place like, I believe San Francisco, actually, because their order was so severe, police were stopping people and checking to see where they were going. And people were having to hold letters that they worked for an essential business. So it really does depend, but they need that reasonable suspicion in order to make the stop.
And Richard, jump in as an experienced prosecutor from Galveston County, just south of us, where we are in Houston. What's your 2 cents on that?
Right. So all the police need is they have to reasonably believe that you committed a crime. So if being outside of your house is criminalized in your state, that could lead them to pull you over. Here in Texas, where they're just a strongly worded suggestion, you're still allowed to perform essential activities. You're not going to see that here. But it's a low threshold, and how it really affects us gun owners. Once they stop you for, let's say they think you're violating, or you're speeding, or you violated one of these orders, if they discover another crime along the way, the scope of their investigation can greatly expand, and it can quickly expand. And so we could see a whole bunch of a litany of other things that the person could be punished for outside of just being outside of their house.
Wow. U.S. Law Shield, answers to COVID-19 questions you're not getting in the media. Wait, let me get to one more of your questions that you sent in. Richard, staying with you. Let's see. This is from Ron, last initial A. Is it okay? This is a good one. Is it okay to still carry my sidearm here, my weapon, while wearing a mask, or could I be viewed as having a stronger criminal intent that way? That's a great question. I'm wearing my mask. I've got my license to carry. Maybe I'm open carrying. What advice do you have, independent program attorney in Texas, for this Texas question, possibly?
So this is a great example of how the law can be completely turned on its head. So in states like Washington State, it would be a crime to conceal your face while carrying a handgun. But here in Texas, especially in Harris County, where the county judge has ordered that you must wear a mask outside your house, if you're not wearing a mask and carrying, then you would be committing a crime of unlawfully carrying. So that just goes to show how there's no common thread among these things, that they're not based on logic or reason or equity. It's just whatever the executive is feeling like at that time. The only way to answer this is to talk to an attorney in your state. Here in Texas, if you've been ordered to wear a mask, if there's an order in place, Carrying a handgun under the authority of your license to carry, not wearing a mask, that might be unlawfully carrying a handgun because you're committing a crime while carrying a handgun. But like I said, other states, it may be a crime. It may be a crime if you are wearing your mask. So you really have to talk to an attorney in your state.
This is amazing. Emily Taylor, jump in. This is our final question for our broadcast tonight about wearing a mask, and could this be a stronger, quote, criminal intent in the eyes of law enforcement?
Yeah, I didn't imagine myself ever saying that it would be advisable to walk outside with your face covered and also carrying your weapon. And yet here we are, because as Richard said, particularly in Harris County, where we're all under an order to wear masks starting today, if you don't wear your mask and you're carrying, you could risk committing unlawful carry, and you could risk, arrest and perhaps even the loss of your license to carry if you're convicted. It is so variable. We're under extreme circumstances here, which lends an extreme answer, which is all of the sudden we have situations in which I can say, if you're going to carry, you better be wearing that mask, which would be the advice here in Harris County. But as Richard said, it's totally different advice in different states. I think North Carolina is another one that doesn't allow the wearing of masks in public, and that has some implications with firearm rights, I believe. So it really does depend. Absolutely consult an attorney. Anytime you are even a little bit unsure of how something affects your firearms rights, it is not worth the risk to get it wrong.
That's an outstanding question sent in from Ron. Listen, we got to wrap it up. You've done a phenomenal job. I've got to thank all of our independent program attorneys. Had a chance to reach out to Edwin Walker. I want to thank Emily Taylor. Emily, as always, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sam.
Richard Hayes, what can I say? You're phenomenal at this. Thanks for joining us and helping educate us right here on live broadcast across America.
All right. Thanks, Sam. It's always great to talk with you.
You got it. Now, everyone else, what are you waiting for? I am a member of U.S. Law Shield. Tonight was just the tip of the iceberg, because it's access, it's education, it's empowering, and it's that 24/7 access to the attorney-answered emergency hotline and special member discounts and webinars and seminars where we can learn and we can just stay safe. Become a member now. Get that peace of mind that you can only get with U.S. Law Shield by visiting their website, uslawshield.com/defend. In Houston, Texas, I'm Sam Malone. See you.